Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss on Internet Shitlords. Yes, it is I. And I am here today. I was going to talk... I was thinking originally that I was going to do a video about the new DMG cover, which I'm sure most of you will have probably seen by now. If you haven't, it's they did a cover that was pretty lame for the Player's Handbook. And then for the DMG one, they did a cover that features the villains of the D&D 1980s cartoon. I'm not going to do a video about that because I realized that I had almost nothing to say about it. Except that it is, like, the only thing to say about it is that this is WotC engaging in desperate levels of member berries, trying desperately to tap into some kind of nostalgia to get people to play. And it confirms to me that their sales must be even more down than I thought they were. So the question too is, like, who do they think they're going to appeal to here, right? Like, there have been studies done. The majority of 5e players, who will presumably be the ready pool for 1D&D, are millennials. And this is not, the D&D cartoon is not part of the millennial experience, right? These millennials would have been babies at best, or more likely not having been born yet, when the cartoon was on TV. Like, I was a little kid when the cartoon was on TV, right? So it's really old. So it's not for them. And by now, also, the second largest demographic or generational demographic of players are almost certainly Gen Z, right? I'm pretty sure that it's still more of a millennial phenomenon than a Gen Z phenomenon. But there are some Gen Z that play it, obviously. And probably at this point more that play it than there are Gen Xers that still play it. I'm guessing. Now, this is not, I can't assert that, but I'm guessing it, right? So what are they trying to, are they trying to get Gen Xers, who have been probably the group that's been most quickly falling away in disgust at their recent products, at all the woke garbage and nonsense and the turn away from actual adventuring that's in their books in favor of, like having wondrous experiences in a fantasy carnival, or going to the prom, or, going to do an Eat, Pray, Love food tasting tour of the plains, right? In their recent books, right? Those are all real things that happened in their books. So maybe they're trying to, like, bring Gen Xers back. Look, it's the characters from the comics. But first of all, the comics were never that cool, right? Like, I'm sorry. There's a lot of people who watched as a kid. I watched not the comic, the TV show, the comic, the cartoon, right? The cartoon, I watched that as a kid, right? And I thought it was okay. But even like this, I watched it before I ever played D&D, because I would have been like 7 or 8 years old, I think, when it came out, or I might be wrong. It might have been a year later or earlier. I'm not sure, but I was young. And I had not yet played D&D when the D&D cartoon came out, and when I watched it, I thought that it was a little bit lame, right? Like, I thought it had some cool stuff in it. Don't get me wrong, but the idea of, like, a bunch of kids in a carnival ride that end up in a fantasy, It didn't appeal to me as much as I expected it to. It had too many cutesy poo things in it, right? Like the little unicorn and whatever else, Like, why is the dungeon master a midget? I never got a lot of the point of this, right? Like, I thought that, like, Thundar was way better, for example, than, and of course, like the superheroes, all those cartoons, and to say nothing of G.I. Joe and Transformers, right? So D&D, the cartoon, was relatively low on my list, right? And then, of course, later, when I started playing D&D, and I look back at the cartoon, it really didn't seem to have very much to do with D&D, in fact, right? Like, it's not a good D&D cartoon. It doesn't really reflect a lot about D&D. But it has gained nostalgia force over the years, just because member berries, right? And it's just pure member berries that they're trying to use to sell you on this crap product that they're going to put out, right? Because I can guarantee you that of the three, the worst book is going to be the DM's Guide. Because the original 5e DM's Guide was actually really, really good. It was filled with useful stuff. It was filled with random tables. It was filled with modifications. It was filled with optional rules, with guidelines on how to handle things as a DM. And all of that stuff was either problematic or stuff that turned out not to be of interest to the 5e players, right? So they're going to get rid of all of that. They're going to replace it with a bunch of absolutely lame garbage. I bet you anything it'll be the worst of the three changes out of all those books. But anyways, that's all I had to say about it, right? So that's it. That doesn't matter. So I was looking for another subject to talk to you about. And I could have talked about, but I haven't even really finished watching it because it's so goddamn long, the Neckbeardia review of Baptism of Fire. Because some people contacted me and they told me how in Neckbeardia's live stream, apparently, some people said that they trashed Baptism of Fire or something like that. I actually started watching, and I don't think they trashed it. I'm not gonna make a big criticism of Neckbeardia. There were some things that they pointed out that are true, but have explanations for them, right? Like, a lot of people have pointed out that it seems like the book has been very badly proofread. And there's a reason for that, but it's not for me to say what happened. That's for Chris Miller and Drive-Thru to work out, okay? But it's not my business, okay? I can assure you that the original version, like, I actually have a PDF where a lot of those lacks of capitalization are not there, right? They're actually correctly capitalized. Right? I'm not saying that there wasn't any typos, but that it wasn't the way it looked like there. So that's one thing, right? And then they say that they don't like the system, right? Well, neither of these guys are obviously not OSR players, right? They come out of, 3rd or 4th edition or whatever, where they have a wide variety of player options and character building and all of that. And so the OSR isn't their deal. And that's kind of okay too, right? The part when they say it's boring is a bit annoying to me, but I can understand that, it's an opinion, right? So I'm not going to object to anyone's legitimate criticisms, right? They pointed out that there are a lot of capitalization errors in the book. That is true. There's a reason for it, but it's true. So I'm not going to be mad at them for saying that, right? And I'm not going to be mad at them for having different tastes. I think that it would have been a better review maybe if they'd said, well, we like this, and that's why we don't really like the fighter in Baptism of Fire, right? But if you like this other thing, you might like the fighter in Baptism of Fire, right? So it depends on the person. That's a reviewer tip there, guys, right? And as for like opinion stuff, which a lot of their review that what I've seen of it so far is, it's opinion, and that's okay. I'm not exactly worried. First of all, a bunch of people have seen now the book, right? They, and Neckbeardia and Guardbro talked about stuff that they found interesting in the book, so that might draw people's attention. And also, they've said stuff. They said stuff they liked in the product, right? So I'm not worried. and there's like 95% of every piece of media about Baptism of Fire has been positive, right? It is #1 best-selling still today in the OSR list, like a month after it came out, right? The #1 bestseller in the OSR. It's like #2 bestseller in print overall in Drive-Thru RPG. I'm not concerned by people making legitimate. I would like it if they could clarify to their audience sometimes, this is opinion, right? And then this is fact, and then this is our preference, right? Those sorts of things are important to differentiate. And you see examples of me doing that when I do reviews. In any case, I also liked that Neckbeardia gave a shout out to Sword and Caravan, which he liked better than Baptism of Fire. Sword and Caravan is a setting book, and Baptism of Fire is a rule book, and he doesn't like the OSR rules. So he liked the Sword and Caravan setting book. So you could consider that, I should put somewhere, approved by Neckbeardia, right? And there you go. That is Sword and Caravan. And Neckbeardia, if you haven't picked it up yet, you might want to check Wilderlands, Random Wilderness Encounters for Sword and Caravan, which gives you tables for the monster encounters when you go off-road, Plus it has the Eastern Dragon, and it has rules for creating families and inheritance stuff for characters native to the Silk Road. So be sure to check out. It's a little book, but it's a good book. All right, so now I'm going to get to, 10 minutes in, I'm going to get to the actual topic of the night, which is, because they're all short topics, really. But this is a really amusing one to me. Mike Mearls, as you know, was the lead designer on 5th edition. He was very cooperative with me in my vision for the game. And he along with myself, Zach Smith, we all got involved in the very first outrage brigade of its kind in hobby areas, because it happened 6 months before Gamergate, and it was called Consultant Gate. And the left hated him from that moment on. They hated him because he put me in a major position influencing Dungeons and Dragons. And then, they've obviously hated it even more, the fact that that product was the best-selling version of Dungeons and Dragons ever, and that they now have to basically run on it as the center guideline. They can't, like, 1D&D is not going to be very significantly different in terms of mechanics. They're going to change all of the political language around it, right? They're going to get rid of some things like class and whatever, right? But they're not going to change the core rules of 5e, because it really works. It really works really well. And I know that most of you are OSR people and you're not going to enjoy playing it. I don't enjoy playing 5e, but I can tolerate playing 5e, and everyone can tolerate playing 5e. And that's the secret of its success, right? Like it's a perfect setting for casual play, right? You don't have to know a lot about gaming to play 5e. That's why it's so good. But in any case, they hated Mike Mearls from that moment onwards, right? Because he what he was supposed to do was cry out against me and Zach for reasons that, because I'm mean to people on the internet. He was supposed to banish us forever from the halls of Wizards of the Coast, and spit on our names, take away all the money that they'd already given to us. I don't know what they were supposed to do. We weren't even working for them at the time that by the time the book came out, we were done, right? We had finished our job. So we weren't even being paid or anything. So they couldn't take away our pay. But they wanted him to make a statement denouncing us as whatever, right? As whatever made up shit they made up about us. And he wouldn't do it, because he asked for proof. He didn't find it. And then they invented a story that Mike Mearls had given us the names of everybody who'd spoken against us. And that's complete bullshit. It never happened, So he got hounded all through the time that he was in charge of 5e by the left, until finally when the Zach S. incident happened about his ex accusing him of being abusive, and Zach was basically blacklisted all over the internet, all over the gaming hobby anyways. And then Wizards removed the entire section, the entire credit for consultants from the book as a way to avoid, because they couldn't just remove Zach's name or he could have sued them, right? Because they had no proof that he had done anything wrong, right? So they had to remove all of the consultants, which included myself. And eventually then they moved Mike Mearls, right? Because there was just too much. At that point they said, as if Mike Mearls had to know that several years after his book came out, there would be a scandal involving Zach Smith's girlfriend, right? So that's ridiculous, but there you have it, right? So Zach went on to do other things. He did stuff in Magic, where he made a shit ton of money for Wizards of the Coast, and he went on after that to help Larian with Baldur's Gate 3. You will notice that there's a trend involved in Mike Mearls. Everything he touches turns to gold, right? D&D became the best-selling D&D WotC ever did under Mike Mearls. When he went to Wizards, to the Magic section, he led one of the most successful, from what I understand, I don't play Magic, but this is what I've read, one of the most successful product periods for the Magic game in recent history, making a ton of money, like tons of money, much more than D&D. And then he went to Larian and helped them make the most successful video game of at least last year. But I mean, from what I can see, it's again, I don't play Baldur's Gate 3, but it's a huge hit, right? So everything the guy touches turns to gold. So what does Wizards do? They fire him, right? They fire him permanently because he's just too good. It's also because they're not interested in anyone who actually knows how to play or design, much less design D&D, and they don't actually want to have hired someone who's going to design stuff because they don't think that's necessary somehow. Because they think they're all just going to need like a virtual tabletop. The rules are never going to change. And then they can like milk actual subscribers from their content material to sell to other subscribers, and it'll all work out for them, But they basically killed their entire book division. So Mike Mearls wouldn't have had very much to do, right? It wouldn't have made a lot of sense to have him around. Fair enough. So he got fired, and when he got fired, there were a ton of people that were celebrating the fact that he was finally gone from Hasbro altogether, right? So, good news. Mike Mearls has been hired as the executive producer of all role-playing games in the role-playing games division of Chaosium Books. So, Chaosium, you will know, is a long-time RPG producer that produced most famously Call of Cthulhu, but also RuneQuest and Pendragon and Elric, probably a couple of others I'm forgetting. They were very big in the 80s, and they continued to be fairly big in the 90s and early 2000s. Now, I think that they've only been doing Cthulhu stuff for the most part for the last several years, but it seems as though Chaosium, because I think Chaosium was also into other stuff, which is why he has that particular title, and now they want to get more into RPGs again. And I will not be surprised if they get Mike Mearls in there to do like a competitor RPG, like a fantasy RPG or something like that, against 1D&D, I think that a lot of people are seeing this great opportunity because it looks as though 1D&D is going to go exclusively into the realm of the virtual tabletop. Like, you'll probably be able to get PDFs, you'll be able to get the physical books of the 1D&D core books, but nothing else. I mean, like, there might be occasional, like, special things, right? But for the most part, it looks like all of that is going to be happening. Everything that's important to them is going to be happening online. So a company like Chaosium, if they get a really good game designer, then working on that, they could potentially create something that'll fill that vacuum that is being caused by 1D&D, where there are a bunch of people that will go to the virtual tabletop, probably not as many as one would as Hasbro wants or needs, actually, but there's going to be a ton that won't, and there's going to be some of those who will then go looking for another game because they know that there's not going to have more supported stuff, official supported stuff for 5e. I mean, I'm sure there's still going to be third-party 5e stuff out there. There might be some people that just keep playing 5e, but there are other people that are going to go look for the other new thing, And if Mike Mearls does a fantasy game for Chaosium, that could be a big deal. That could be something that works for them, right? But the point is, he's been hired by Chaosium. Chaosium's a fairly woke company these days. It's not by any means based or anything like that. Sandy Peterson's pretty based, but he's been basically drummed out of any decision-making part of Chaosium, from what I understand. And they're pretty woke, but then again, so is Mike. Or at least Mike has always been able to give the politically correct lines he needs to keep his job. He's an executive, right? Like that, he's very professional at that, and I have no delusions that he's going to be like now suddenly raging against the machine or something like that. He's going to be continuing to try to make commercial product for someone who will pay him, and that's what he gets with Chaosium. But nevertheless, all of the left-wing garbage people are absolutely furious. They're just so enraged. It's hilariously funny how furious they really are. And I've been seeing some of this in RPGNet. They just went batshit. And of course my name gets mentioned in there, and I just fucking love it. It's so hilarious watching these guys fume and rage at everything. One of them was saying something like, and unfortunately the thread is locked now, because otherwise I would have gotten someone to go in there and point out the fact, right? Somebody was saying, the terrible thing about Mike Mearls hiring the RPG Pundit is that not only is he evil, but he has no knowledge of game design and has no talent at it, right? And I'm like, dude, you're saying this when my book is the #1 best-selling book right now. You're saying it at this time, you know. So please, bitch. You know? Now there's so much of this sort of thing. It's very amusing actually seeing these guys seethe and rage at the fact that Mike Mearls, who's, because, you know, like I said, Mike Mearls is not, you know, he's not based, he's not anti-woke, he's not any of those things, but he is talented, right? He is a talented designer, and he's got a fairly good idea of what to make. And on top of that, he is very clear about who is actually useful at helping him and who isn't. Yeah. So like, he hired me and Zach, not because of our winning personalities, but because of our critical eye and our ability to be honest about what we think and our chops in design, you know. So that was what he was looking for, and he got it. So in any case, I want to wish the best to Mike Mearls in Chaosium and hope that he makes a product that isn't too woke, but will end up just being another pain in the ass for Hasbro. and I hope that Chaosium doesn't end up disappointing him by, you know, crumbling to the woke mob's ridiculous obsession with this guy. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say for the most part about this situation. But I noticed that most people hadn't found out about this. Like, everybody's been talking about the DMG cover, but I haven't seen anyone so far report about Mike Mearls on YouTube, at least. So there you have it. Now you know. And anyways, please share this video, support it by hitting the like button, share it anywhere you think people will be interested or they'll get pissed off. Check out Baptism of Fire. It is doing incredibly well. It is the top-selling game, you know, in the OSR. So be sure to see what the fuss is about. But also check out my other products like Sword and Caravan, the Gonzo Fantasy Companion, Wilderlands, and all of my other books. The links are all in the description below. Especially check out the Pundit Files. My latest Pundit Files issue is called Medieval Authentic Traps, or Historical Authentic Traps. I forget, one of the two. And it's full of credible traps for playing in historical settings based on actual traps that existed at the appropriate points in time in history. And so it gives you some guidelines on how to make traps, not that are crazy and fantastical, but that are reflective of what how actual traps would have worked at the time. And some of them are going to be familiar to you, but some of them are not the typical D&D traps, you know. So be sure to check that out. You can pick that issue up or any of the other issues of Pundit Files, including the 1930s Invisible College campaign, the Medieval City Guide to Baghdad, the incredible sourcebook on jousting and horses, and all of the other issues of the Pundit Files from the Red Room Webstore only. And the cost is about $3.50, okay? So if you can give me $3.50, you can have an issue of the Pundit Files, okay? Very good. To check all that out, and currently smoking, this is a Stanwell Chestnut plus Argento Natural.